We all know that this is what a steel bike looks like, and we all know that this is what an aluminum bike looks like. But what if I told you that this Cantú Aero with its, well, aerodynamic tubing through some black magic wizardry is actually made out of steel? From Korea, let's take a closer look at a steel track bike that even gives the venerable Cinelli Steel Vigorelli a run for its money. A steel track bike that you've never seen the likes of before. Here is the bike check for Seungwan Kim's Cantu Aero. Speaking of steel bikes, you should check out this video sponsored by Wabi Cycles. Wabi can help you build the buttery bike of your dreams. To learn more about their budget to baller track component selection that they have, stick around until the end of the video. Someone writes, I started riding fixed gear back in 2018 when I saw an advert for a fixed gear crit called King of Track and became determined to own a fixed gear bike. I've been riding a road bike since 2016, but I felt there was just something missing, like there wasn't a connection between me and the bike. After about 9 months of saving up money, I was finally able to purchase my first fixed gear. It was a blue Engine 11 Crit D, and thanks to some discounts from a local bike shop, I was able to enjoy a pretty baller setup. I used that to race in the King of Track that same year. As years passed, I went on bike trips, got to meet new people, and of course, upgraded my parts even more. After 3 years of riding my Engine 11, I switched over to my current frame, a red Cantu Aero steel frame. And yes, it really is made of steel and weighs about 2.4 kilos, that's about 5.3 pounds with the fork. And for me, that is my favorite part of this bike. You take one look at it with all of its exotically shaped aerodynamic tubing and you think this has to be an aluminum bike or a titanium bike, just not steel. Because we think steel bikes, they always have round tubing. Aluminum bikes can have round tubing or aero tubing. And this is what an aluminum bike looks like. Aluminum's characteristics are much better for bending into fancy shapes than steel. It takes an incredible amount of craftsmanship and know-how to make steel do this while still keeping the weight down. And yeah, believe it or not, this Cantú Aero is actually made of steel. If you take a magnet to it, it will stick. The reason why I changed is because during the King of Track race, I met the folks from Cinelli and saw their Vigorelli Steel. I remember loving how it looked, especially the combination of the steel frame and carbon fork. Unfortunately, I was a high schooler and had no means to afford a $1,000 plus frame set at that time. Cinellis are quite expensive in Korea. They're expensive everywhere, but yeah, they're more expensive in Korea. Before I could do anything, they were sold out. When the Steel Vigorelli came out, it was a super cool bike. Nobody at that point made a production frame set quite like it. Fixed gear riding is perhaps the area of cycling that innovates the least, because fixed gear riders tend to really enjoy using stuff that's been proven to work over many years. We don't even like derailleurs because they're less than 100 years old. When the Steel Vig came out, it was fresh and exciting without being, well, dumb, as most bike innovations are. Cinelli broke the tradition of steel bikes always coming with a steel fork and included a carbon fork. They tweaked the geometry to make it supposedly better for crit racing, moving away from the traditional track geometry that we know and love, and moving more towards a geometry that looks more like a road bike. It's almost as if most fixed gear riders ride our bikes on the road instead of the track. What a revolutionary idea. While the Cinelli Steel Vig may have popularized this type of fixed gear, they are not the only ones in the modern steel fixed gear game. I still wanted a steel frame with a carbon fork, so I picked my next best option, the Cantú Aero. It was still a $1,000 plus frame set, but I was now a university student. After a year of tutoring, I was able to afford the frame set. Don't get me wrong, Cinelli, they make some great bikes and some not great bikes. But if I had the choice between a Steel Vigorelli that's cranked out in a factory that prefers to remain unnamed versus a Cantu that is meticulously handmade in Mexico, also from Columbus steel like the Vigorelli, it might even be a higher grade of Columbus steel because I have to bend it into these fancy shapes, from a company where their motto is, you imagine it, we build it, where you can actually talk to the people that build your bike. It's a no-brainer for me. I'm taking the Cantu. This isn't the next best option. This is just a strictly better option. You'll see that I have quite the number of stickers on my bike. That's because the paint on the frame is quite weak. Okay, there's one area where the Cantu is not as good as the Cinelli. There's been a lot of times when I leaned my bike in the wrong way and it ended up with a paint chip, but all the stickers allow me to build somewhat of a character of my bike. Since I really like the Pain Cave logo from God and Famous, there's a lot of it. The frame ride's quite stiff. I expected it to be more compliant since it's steel, but because the tubing is oversized, it packs a lot of stiffness. When I first rode it, it felt like someone was pushing me from behind. That was when I knew I wanted this frame. Yes, it's heavier than aluminum frames, but the ride feel was something unique. And the uniqueness of the Cantú Aero doesn't just stop there. The undrilled fork awards bonus fixie points, but the brake bridge, unfortunately, isn't undrilled. It's better. There is no brake bridge. And that's the fun thing about bikes. We tend to make these sweeping overgeneralizations that aluminum bikes are stiff, steel bikes are compliant, carbon bikes are for people that never smile. When in reality, how a bike rides has more to do with the overall design of the bike rather than the material that the designer chose. I've ridden a lot of bikes, from steel to aluminum to carbon, and the stiffest bike that I've ever ridden by far was a steel Spicer Pursuit track bike. A great bike builder can make the bike ride in ways that you would never expect. But all good things must come to an end. Next week, I'll be enlisting in the Army and serving for a year and a half, since it's mandatory in Korea. Except for occasional holidays, I won't be able to see or ride my bike again. If you ever plan on coming to Korea, hit me up because I'll be more than glad to help you explore Korea on your fixed gear. Thanks for reading Seungwan Kim. And it's not just your time on this beautiful bike that's come to an end. If you're looking to buy a Cantu, you might be out of luck because they've been radio silent on all of their social media platforms since 2019. And that's the reality of the bike business. The fancier a bike you make, the more bespoke it is, the higher quality it is, how sad, the less likely you are to stay in business. But the silver lining to that sad reality is that it makes bikes like this custom Cantu Aero all the more special. Another way to look at it is like they're too good for the world and they're only available for a limited time. Just like these tap water bottles available now at zackalardo.com/merch. They're BPA free and made by Specialized in California. A set of 40cm Thomson drops wrapped in mashed Chaz bar tape connect to a matching Thomson X2 stem in a saucy two-toned black stem with a silver faceplate, finished off with a God and Famous top cap with boutique Thomson spacers meticulously CNC'd to save exactly 0 watts. A Tune Comvor Plus carbon fiber saddle supports Seungwan's rear, and he notes that it's surprisingly very comfortable. Pro tip: saddle comfort is all about shape, not padding. A Thomson Elite C-post props up the saddle. A set of Look Keo Max carbon pedals ensure every pedal stroke rockets the bike forward while keeping the rider comfortable, at least on the bike. Brochure's RIP cranks drive the bike, excellent crank name, with a matching Brocher ceramic bottom bracket for the silkiest pedal strokes. The most respected chainring on planet Earth, the Sugino Zen in 49 tooth, pairs with a 16 tooth Capstein standard cog, giving a moderately heavy brakeless gear ratio. A beefy max torque lock ring eliminates any cog slippage, while a Mash X Izumi gold chain links the drivetrain together. I couldn't help but notice that this chain is decidedly not gold, not even where the rollers are, because, you know, gold wears off where things touch it. But Mash put their logo on the box, so it must be only the highest quality. 32mm DT Swiss RR511s take the cake for the best bike product name ever and sound more like a set of jeans. A set of Victoire X Bishop bikes super sprint hubs build out the wheels. A 28mm Schwalbe Pro 1 in the front and a 28mm Pirelli Cinturato in the rear keep this spicy ride rolling. And most importantly, Roadrunner valve caps remind the rider to outrun Wile E. Coyote, which in our day and age are BMW drivers, squeezing out approximately 22.3 more watts out of the bike. Although the Cantu Aero doesn't have the same brand recognition and Instagrammability as a Cinelli Steel Vigorelli, us more discerning hipsters know that this is the better bike, even if it doesn't have a better paint job and a fancy Italian name on the down tube. With its exotic aerodynamic, externally butted steel, complete lack of a brake bridge, that's a weird one but really cool, lovingly handmade in Mexico. Again, Cinelli, they make a lot of great bikes and one not great bike, but the Cantu is much more of a conversation piece. When I first learned that this bike was made out of steel and not out of aluminum, I had to do a double take. I just couldn't believe it. Just looking at the thing challenges our idea of what a steel bike is, and it gets the cogs turning in our heads at what a steel bike can be. If you want to have your fixed gear featured in this bike check series, you can find the instructions on how to do that in the description. Just note, it's not the prettiest or most baller bikes that get featured on the channel, it's the ones with the best story. In other words, the more that you can write the video for me, the more likely I am to feature your bike. Speaking of featuring bikes, this portion of the video is sponsored by Wabi Cycles. From Wabi's own meticulously hand-built wheels to the track lacrosse ready velocity coils to the ever-popular H+N archetypes laced to your favorite hubs from Phil Wood, Grand Comp, DT Swiss, and my personal favorite, the Suzu Pro Maxes. Top it off with the most reliable tires from Continental and Panaracer, throw in an EAI cog in the flavor of your choice, and your favorite chain from KMC and Azumi, and your bike will make your inner fixie kid squeal with joy. So go ahead, check out Wabi Cycles and their component selection linked in the description. Fixie famous shoutouts to Mario Perez, Brandon Black, David K, Gio Dezera, Julian Corona, Ryan Witt, Palangi, and Zane Kolnik for helping us to make these videos possible with their support on Patreon. And remember that life is short, but don't make it shorter, so be sure to ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous.